Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag as he finished fixing the air filter in Section 7. The work was simple but important. Without these filters, the air on Kepler Station would become poison in days. But nobody cared about that. They only saw him as the human maintenance worker who did the jobs nobody else wanted. "Chen!" A voice barked behind him. Marcus turned to see Vortak, the tall, blue-skinned Valorian, who supervised the engineering section. His forearms crossed over his chest in a way that meant trouble. "You took too long on that filter. A proper engineer would have finished in half the time." Marcus looked at his tools. He had actually finished faster than usual. But there was no point arguing. "Sorry, sir. I'll work faster next time." "See that you do." Vortak's orange eyes glowed brighter with annoyance. "Your primitive methods slow down the whole team. Perhaps you should consider a different line of work." The other engineers laughed. 3 Valorians and 2 Cerebrans, all of them looking at Marcus like he was some kind of joke. The Cerebrans, with their large heads and pale skin, thought they were the smartest beings in the galaxy. The Valorians believed their technology was perfect, and here was Marcus, just a human with basic tools and simple ideas. Marcus packed his tools and moved to his next job. The life support system in Section 12 needed attention. The readings showed something wrong, but nobody could figure out what. The station's best minds had been working on it for 3 days. As he walked through the corridors, Marcus heard the whispers. They always followed him. "That's the human," aliens would say. "Poor thing doesn't even know how primitive he is." Some felt sorry for him. Others just found him amusing. None of them took him seriously. Kepler Station was huge, with over 50,000 beings from dozens of different species. Humans were new to the galaxy, only joining the Galactic Confederation 5 years ago. Most species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had advanced technology, perfect societies, and complex ways of doing everything. Humans were still learning how to fit in. Marcus reached Section 12 and opened his toolkit. The life support system was a maze of pipes, wires, and computer screens. The Valorian engineers had run every test they could think of. The Cerebran analysts had created complex models to predict the problem. Nothing worked. The system kept showing warning signs, but nobody could find the cause. He looked at the main display. Oxygen levels were dropping slowly but surely. In 2 days, this section would be dangerous. In 4 days, it would be deadly. 300 beings lived and worked in Section 12. If the system failed, they would all have to evacuate. That meant moving them to other sections, which were already crowded. It would be a disaster. Marcus studied the readings more carefully. The computer said everything was working correctly, but the oxygen levels disagreed. There had to be a simple explanation. There always was. He followed the main oxygen line from the generator to the distribution point. Everything looked normal. The pipes were clean. The connections were tight. The flow meters showed proper pressure, but something felt wrong. Marcus had learned to trust his feelings. His father, who worked on space freighters, taught him that machines talk to you if you knew how to listen. Not with computers or sensors, but with small sounds. Tiny vibrations, little details that fancy equipment missed. He put his ear to the main oxygen pipe. There it was, a soft whistling sound that shouldn't exist. The pipe was leaking somewhere, but the leak was too small for the sensors to detect. All the computer tests in the galaxy wouldn't find a microfracture in the pipe wall. Following the sound, Marcus crawled through a narrow maintenance space. The whistling grew louder. Finally, he found it. A hairline crack in a joint, where 2 pipe sections connected. It was so small he could barely see it. But it was bleeding oxygen into space. The fix was simple. He shut off the flow, applied a patch, and reopened the system. The oxygen levels immediately started climbing back to normal. The warning lights went out. The system was fixed. Marcus climbed out of the maintenance space and dusted off his uniform. He walked to the main engineering office to report the repair. Inside, he found Vortak and the other engineers still studying computer displays and arguing about theoretical solutions. "The system is fixed," Marcus announced. Everyone turned to stare at him. Vortak's orange eyes dimmed with confusion. "Impossible. We've been working on this for days. What did you do?" "I found a small leak in Section 12 Alpha. Applied a patch. Should hold for years." The chief Cerebran analyst, Drellick, floated forward on his anti-gravity platform. His large brain pulsed with irritation. "That cannot be correct. Our scans showed no structural damage to the oxygen system. You must have made an error." "Check the readings," Marcus said simply. Drellick manipulated the holographic display with his thin fingers. His pale face grew paler as he studied the data. The oxygen levels in Section 12 were indeed normal. The warning indicators had disappeared. The system was working perfectly. "How did you find this alleged leak?" Vortak demanded. Listened to the pipes, heard the whistling, followed the sound. The engineers exchanged glances. Drellick's brain pulsed faster. "You listened? With your primitive auditory organs? Instead of using proper scanning equipment? Sometimes simple works better than complicated." That was the wrong thing to say. Vortak's forearms spread wide in anger. "Simple? Primitive? You think your barbaric methods are superior to proper engineering protocols? You stumbled onto a solution through pure luck. Nothing more." "But it worked," Marcus pointed out. "A lucky accident," Drellick declared. "Any competent engineer would have found the problem through systematic analysis. Your crude approach cannot be trusted." Marcus felt his face grow hot. The system was going to fail. People could have died. I fixed it. Isn't that what matters? Station Commander Zelak chose that moment to enter the office. The tall Valorian wore the blue and gold uniform of the Confederation Navy. His orange eyes swept the room, taking in the situation. "What's the commotion about?" Zelak asked. Vortak straightened to attention. "The human claims to have solved the Section 12 life support problem, sir. Without following proper procedures. Is the system operational?" Zelak inquired. "Yes, sir. But then the problem is solved." Zelak looked at Marcus with what might have been approval. "Good work." But Drellick wouldn't let it go. "Sir, we must address this breach of protocol. Allowing primitive trial and error methods sets a dangerous precedent. What if he had been wrong? What if his crude approach had made the problem worse?" Zelak's expression changed. His eyes grew brighter, more focused on Marcus. "The Cerebran makes a valid point. While the result was fortunate, your methods were indeed primitive. Barbaric, even. You succeeded through luck. Nothing more." Marcus felt something break inside his chest. "Sir, you are a useful worker, Chen, but do not mistake fortune for competence. In the future, you will follow established protocols or face removal from this station. Do I make myself clear?" The room was silent. Every alien eye was on Marcus, watching for his response. He wanted to argue, to point out that their established protocols had failed for 3 days, while his simple approach worked immediately. But what was the point? He was just a human, a primitive savage who got lucky. "Yes, sir," Marcus whispered. "Good. Return to your duties." Marcus left the office and walked slowly back to his quarters. The corridors seemed longer than usual, filled with aliens who saw him as nothing more than an amusing curiosity, a lucky barbarian who had stumbled onto a solution. In his small room, Marcus sat on his narrow bed and stared at the wall. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans didn't belong among the stars. Maybe he was just a primitive creature pretending to understand advanced civilization. Outside his window, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world that had sent him and thousands of others to find humanity's place in the galaxy. But what if there was no place for them? What if they were forever doomed to be the children playing at adult games? Marcus closed his eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow, when he would face the same condescending smiles and dismissive comments. When he would be reminded again that he was nothing but a savage with tools. Marcus couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, He heard Commander Zelak calling him a lucky savage. The words echoed in his head like a curse. He sat up in his narrow bed and checked the time. 3 hours past midnight, station time. The corridors would be nearly empty now. Only security patrols and emergency crews worked the night shift. Marcus pulled on his work clothes and left his quarters. He needed to walk, to think, to find some corner of the station where nobody would stare at him or whisper about the primitive human. He took a maintenance lift down to the lower levels, where few beings ever went. These sections held the station's guts: power conduits, water recyclers, waste processors, and air scrubbers. The work here was dirty and dangerous, perfect for humans, the other species said. Let the barbarians handle the unpleasant jobs. Marcus walked through dimly lit corridors, his footsteps echoing off metal walls. The air down here smelled of oil and ozone. Pipes and cables ran along the ceiling like mechanical veins. It was ugly, but it was honest. These systems kept 50,000 beings alive, whether they appreciated it or not. He found himself in Section 47, one of the oldest parts of the station. Some areas here had been sealed off years ago, when newer sections were built. The lighting was poor, with many bulbs burned out and never replaced. It was the perfect place to disappear for a while. Marcus was examining a corroded junction box when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in after a few seconds, casting everything in a dim red glow. But something was wrong. The emergency lights should have activated immediately, not after a delay, and the main power hadn't failed. He could still hear the hum of the air recyclers. Someone had cut the lights deliberately. Marcus reached for his communication device to call security, then stopped. What would he tell them? That he was wandering the abandoned sections in the middle of the night and the lights went out? They would think he was paranoid or making trouble, just another primitive human seeing danger where none existed. He decided to investigate himself. Maybe it was just an electrical fault. He pulled out his small work light and started following the power conduits to find the problem. That's when he saw the first claw mark: 4 parallel scratches in the metal wall, each one deeper than his finger. The metal was scored as if by impossibly sharp knives, but no tool made marks like these. And no being on Kepler Station had claws this size or this sharp. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. He knew these marks. Every human who worked in space knew about them. They appeared on derelict ships found drifting in the void. Their crews vanished without a trace. Void stalkers, the most feared predators in the galaxy. But that was impossible. Void stalkers lived in the dark spaces between stars. They hunted ships that traveled alone through empty space. They never came to populated stations. The experts said they couldn't survive in civilized environments. The experts had been wrong before. Marcus turned off his light and stood perfectly still. If there really was a stalker on the station, making noise or showing light would be suicide. These creatures were perfect predators, evolved to hunt in zero gravity and complete darkness. They could see heat, sense electrical fields, and move without making a sound. But they had never hunted a human before. Marcus had grown up hearing stories about old Earth, before humanity reached the stars. Stories of ancestors who hunted mammoth across frozen plains, who tracked lions through tall grass, who survived by being smarter and more persistent than any predator. Those instincts still lived in human blood, even if the galaxy thought they were primitive. He crept forward in the darkness, using touch and memory to navigate. His work in these sections had taught him every pipe, every junction, every maintenance hatch. The stalker might have perfect senses, but this was Marcus's territory. A soft scraping sound came from somewhere ahead, metal on metal, barely audible. The creature was moving. Marcus found a maintenance shaft and slipped inside. The space was barely large enough for a human, far too small for anything stalker-sized. From here, he could observe without being seen. Through a ventilation grate, he watched the corridor where he had been standing moments before. At first, he saw nothing. Then the shadows seemed to shift, and suddenly there was a shape moving through the red emergency light. It was beautiful and terrible. The stalker moved like liquid metal, flowing from shadow to shadow, without disturbing the air. Its body was elongated and graceful, covered in what looked like living darkness. 6 limbs ended in curved claws that could cut through steel. Its head was narrow and elegant, with large eyes that glowed softly in the dark. The creature paused where Marcus had been standing. It turned its head from side to side, clearly searching for something. For him, Marcus held his breath and pressed himself against the back of the shaft. If the stalker found him here, he would die. There was no escape from a maintenance tube, but the creature continued down the corridor, moving with deadly patience. Marcus waited until he couldn't hear anything, then carefully climbed out of the shaft. He needed to warn the station, to call security, to do something, but as he reached for his communicator, all the lights went out again. Not just the emergency lights this time, everything. In the absolute darkness, Marcus heard something that chilled his blood. Breathing. Slow, steady, and very close. Interesting, a voice said in perfect standard Galactic. The accent was strange, like wind through metal. You hide well for such a large creature. Marcus didn't move, didn't breathe. The voice had come from directly in front of him, but he couldn't see anything. Your heartbeat betrays you, the voice continued. Fast but controlled. You are afraid, but you do not panic. Claws scraped against the floor as the creature moved closer. I have been watching this station for many cycles, studying the different species. The Valorians are predictable. The Cerebrans think too much. The others follow patterns that never change. Marcus finally found his voice. What do you want? But you, the stalker said, ignoring his question. You are different. When the others failed to solve a simple problem, you succeeded. When they mocked you for being primitive, you remained calm. And now, when faced with a predator in the dark, you do not scream or run or call for help, you hide. You think. You plan. The breathing came closer. Marcus could smell the creature now, like ozone and cold space. Tell me, young human. Why do your own kind cast you out? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. They don't cast me out. I'm part of the crew. A sound that might have been laughter echoed in the darkness. I have watched you for days, seen how they treat you. You are useful to them, but not valued. Needed, but not respected. They see you as a clever animal, nothing more. Marcus wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. The stalker was right. This puzzles me, the creature continued. Among my people, one who solves problems that others cannot is honored. One who thinks differently is treasured. But these civilized beings mock what they should celebrate. Light suddenly blazed around them. The stalker had activated some kind of personal illuminator. In its glow, Marcus could see the creature clearly for the first time. It was even more impressive up close. The stalker stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a body designed for perfect predatory efficiency. Its dark skin seemed to absorb light, making it hard to focus on. The large eyes held an intelligence that was both alien and somehow familiar. I am Kes Thrak, the creature said. Among your people, I would be called a hunter. Among mine, I am the one who removes problems that others cannot solve. Are you going to kill me? Marcus asked quietly. Kes Thrak tilted his head to one side. That depends. Are you a problem that needs removing? Marcus thought about it. I don't think so. Neither do I. In fact, I believe you may be something else entirely. The stalker leaned closer. Tell me about the oxygen system you repaired. Marcus described the problem, the failed attempts by the engineering teams, and his simple solution. As he talked, Kes Thrak's eyes grew brighter. Yes, the creature said when Marcus finished. That is what I thought. You hunt problems the way my people hunt prey. Not with complex tools or perfect plans, but with patience, observation, and instinct. I don't understand. The galaxy has forgotten the old ways, Kes Thrak explained. They rely on machines to think for them. on computers to solve problems, on protocols to make decisions. They have lost the ability to adapt, to improvise, to trust their natural senses. The stalker moved closer, and Marcus fought the urge to step back. But you have not lost these things. Your species remembers what mine has always known. That survival depends not on having the most advanced technology, but on being able to change when change is needed. Marcus was beginning to understand. You're not here to hunt people, are you? I hunt problems, Kethrak confirmed. Beings who prey on the innocent, those who abuse power. Criminals that ordinary law enforcement cannot touch. The creature's eyes glowed brighter, and sometimes I find something unexpected. Something worth preserving. Like what? Kethrak made that sound that might have been laughter again. Like a young human who thinks like prey, but has the soul of a hunter. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what would you say if I offered to teach you the old ways, to show you what your instincts could become if properly guided? Marcus felt his heart skip. What would that mean? It would mean leaving this place, this safe, civilized world, where you will always be seen as primitive. It would mean learning to hunt in the spaces between stars, where only the strongest and smartest survive. The stalker leaned back slightly. But it would also mean discovering who you truly are. What your species could become, if they stopped trying to fit into someone else's idea of civilization. Marcus looked around at the maintenance corridor, at the ugly pipes and cables that kept the station alive. He thought about his small room, his thankless job, the constant reminders that he didn't belong. Why? He asked. Why would you want to help me? Kethrak's eyes dimmed to a softer glow. Because I am old, and I am alone. Because my people are scattered across the galaxy, and we seldom meet. Because in all my years of hunting, I have never found another species that thinks the way we do. The creature extended one clawed hand toward Marcus. I offer you this, not as master to student, but as brother to brother. Will you accept? Marcus stared at the offered hand. Behind him lay everything he knew. Safety, routine, and a place where he would never be more than a useful primitive. Ahead lay darkness, danger, and the unknown. He reached out and grasped Kethrak's hand. The claws were warm against his skin. Yes, Marcus said, I'll go with you. For the first time since coming to Kepler Station, Marcus Chen felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Kethrak led Marcus through passages that didn't appear on any station map. Hidden maintenance tunnels, forgotten storage areas, and spaces between the walls that only someone with intimate knowledge of the station could find. They moved in complete darkness. But the stalker guided Marcus safely around every obstacle. How long have you been here? Marcus asked quietly as they crawled through a narrow duct. 47 days, Kethrak replied. I came hunting a war criminal who thought he could hide among peaceful traders. He was wrong. They emerged into a large chamber that Marcus had never seen before. It was hidden deep in the station's superstructure, between the outer hull and the main living areas. Emergency lights provided a dim glow, revealing walls covered with strange markings and symbols. This was a storage bay in the original station design, Kethrak explained. Forgotten when the newer sections were built. I have made it my temporary home. The chamber held items that didn't belong on a civilian station. Weapons that looked both ancient and deadly. Star charts showing regions of space that weren't on official maps. And everywhere, the symbols that Marcus now realized were some kind of writing. Is this stalker language? Marcus asked, pointing at the wall markings. Yes, but not recent. These symbols are old, from the time when my people first traveled between stars. Kethrak traced one of the markings with a claw. This chamber was built over an ancient site. Your species would call it archaeology. Marcus studied the symbols more carefully. They seemed to tell a story, showing elongated figures moving through space, hunting among the stars. How old? Old enough that your species had not yet discovered fire. My people have been hunting in the void since before most civilizations learned to look up at the sky. Kethrak moved to the center of the chamber and settled into a crouch, his 6 limbs folding beneath him in a way that looked both relaxed and ready for instant movement. Sit, young brother. There is much you must understand if you are to walk this path. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the stalker. Tell me about the old ways. To understand the old ways, you must first forget everything the civilized galaxy has taught you about strength. Kethrak's eyes dimmed to a soft glow. They measure power in weapon strength, ship size, technological advancement. They believe that progress means becoming more complex, more sophisticated, more dependent on machines. The stalker leaned forward slightly. But true strength comes from adaptation, from the ability to survive when your machines fail, when your plans break down, when everything you thought you knew proves wrong. Marcus nodded. Like finding a leak by listening instead of using sensors. Exactly. You trusted your instincts over their instruments. You adapted to the situation instead of following their protocols. That is the first principle of the old ways. Kethrak gestured at the walls around them. My ancestors learned this truth long before other species left their homeworlds. The void is hostile to all life. It has no air, no warmth, no forgiveness for the weak or unprepared. Those who tried to conquer it with technology alone died quickly. But those who learned to think like the void, to move like the darkness, to hunt like the emptiness between stars, they survived. They became something new. Something that belonged in places where others could only visit. Marcus thought about Earth's history. Humans learned something similar. We lived through ice ages, droughts, plagues. The ones who survived were the ones who could change when they had to. Yes, Kethrak's eyes brightened with excitement. You understand. This is why I call you brother. Your species remembers what mine has always known. Survival is not about having the best tools. It is about being willing to become the tool that the situation requires. The stalker rose and moved to a wall covered with star charts. For thousands of years, my people have hunted the criminals and predators that flourish in the spaces between civilized worlds. Pirates who prey on merchant ships, slavers who steal children from frontier colonies, war criminals who escape justice by hiding in lawless space. But we do not hunt for sport or profit. We follow a code older than most galactic governments. Kethrak traced a path between stars with one claw. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We eliminate those who abuse power over others. And we never take a life without cause. Marcus felt something stir in his chest, a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. How do you know who deserves to be hunted? The same way you knew where to find the leak in the oxygen system. You observe. You listen. You trust your instincts. Kethrak turned back to Marcus. The universe speaks to those who know how to hear it. Victims cry out in ways that sensors cannot detect. Predators leave tracks that computers cannot see. Is that how you found the war criminal you mentioned? Kethrak nodded. Drevor Malik, a Valorian general who ordered the destruction of civilian colonies during the border wars. Officially, he died when his ship was destroyed. Unofficially, he escaped with stolen funds and a new identity. The stalker's eyes grew brighter, taking on a dangerous edge. He has been living on this station for 6 months, calling himself a retired merchant. But predators cannot change their nature. I watched him threaten a young Kepler who owed him money, saw him strike a server who moved too slowly, observed him planning to sell defective life support equipment to frontier settlements. Marcus felt anger building in his stomach. You stopped him? 3 days ago, he simply disappeared. Security found no body, no evidence, no trace. But his illegal activities also disappeared. The beings he threatened are now safe. The defective equipment was destroyed. And nobody suspects you? Kethrak made that sound that might have been laughter. Who would suspect a myth? According to official records, void stalkers are legends, stories told to frighten pirates. Most beings in the Confederation believe we never existed. The stalker moved closer to Marcus. This is another principle of the old ways. Be invisible until the moment you strike. Let your enemies defeat themselves through their own arrogance and blindness. Marcus thought about his own situation. Is that why you waited so long before approaching me? I needed to understand what you were. To see if you were truly different from the others, or just another primitive trying to fit in. Kestrak's head tilted slightly. Most beings who face rejection become angry or bitter. They lash out at those who hurt them, or retreat into self-pity. But you remained calm, continued to do your work well, solved problems that others could not solve. This told me that your spirit was not broken by their contempt. Off. Marcus remembered the humiliation in the engineering office, the dismissive words from Commander Zelak. It hurt. Pain is a teacher. If you let it be. It can make you stronger or destroy you. The choice is yours. Kestrak extended a clawed hand toward Marcus. Show me your hands. Marcus held out his hands, palms up. Kestrak examined them carefully, tracing the calluses and scars from years of maintenance work. Good. These are the hands of someone who builds rather than destroys, who repairs rather than breaks. You have spent your life making things work better. The stalker's claws were surprisingly gentle as they touched Marcus's skin. Among my people, such hands are honored above those that hold weapons. Because anyone can break things, only the wise can fix them. Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his chest. For the first time in years, someone was treating his work as valuable rather than menial. The galaxy thinks my people are monsters, Kestrak continued. Savage killers who hunt in the dark. They are not entirely wrong. We are predators. But we prey only upon other predators. We are the immune system of civilization, removing the infections that law and order cannot reach. The stalker moved to another wall. This one covered with images carved into the metal. They showed scenes of void stalkers, moving through space, protecting ships from pirates, rescuing prisoners from slavers. For too long, I have hunted alone. My people are scattered. Our numbers few. We meet rarely, and never for long. It is a lonely existence. Marcus heard something in Kestrak's voice that he recognized. The same emptiness he felt every night in his small quarters, surrounded by beings who saw him as an amusing, primitive. But you, Kestrak continued, you have the potential to become something new. A bridge between the old ways and the new galaxy. Human enough to understand the civilized worlds, but trained enough to hunt in the darkness. The stalker turned to face Marcus directly. I offer to teach you not because I need an apprentice, but because I need a brother, someone who can walk between the light and the void, who can protect the innocent without becoming lost in the darkness. Marcus stood up slowly. What would you teach me? Everything. How to move without sound. How to see in absolute darkness. How to read the intentions of others by watching their body language. How to survive in space with minimal equipment. How to hunt those who hurt the innocent. Kestrak's eyes grew brighter. But most importantly, I will teach you to trust yourself. To know that your instincts are not primitive, but ancient. Not savage but wise. Not simple but elegant. Marcus thought about his life on Kepler Station. The daily humiliations. The constant reminders that he didn't belong. The knowledge that he would never be more than a useful tool in the eyes of his colleagues. If I go with you, Marcus asked, can I ever come back? Kestrak considered the question carefully. You can return to civilized space whenever you choose. But you will never again be the person who left. Once you learn the old ways, once you understand your true nature, you cannot forget it. The stalker moved closer. Is that a price you are willing to pay? Marcus looked around the hidden chamber, at the ancient symbols telling stories of hunters among the stars. He thought about the war criminal who had threatened innocence and was now gone. He thought about all the other predators out there, hiding in the darkness between worlds, hurting people who had no one to protect them. Yes, Marcus said firmly. I'm willing. Kestrak made a sound like wind through metal. But this time, Marcus recognized it as approval rather than laughter. Then welcome, brother, your real education begins now. Marcus Chen died on Kepler Station 3 days later. The official report said he was killed in a maintenance accident while working alone in the lower sections. A tragic but not uncommon fate for humans who took dangerous jobs. His body was never recovered, presumably vented into space when a hull breach occurred. The station held a brief memorial service that few attended. Nobody questioned the report. Nobody investigated too closely. After all, who would miss a primitive maintenance worker? But Marcus Chen was very much alive, traveling through the void in a ship that didn't appear on any registry. Thrak's vessel was a marvel of engineering. Built for stealth and survival in the harshest environments, it could hide from sensors, repair itself when damaged, and survive in space longer than most beings could imagine. "Your old life is gone," Thrak told him as they left Kepler Station behind. "From now on, you exist only in the spaces between worlds. You are dead to civilization, but alive to the hunt." The first lessons were the hardest. Marcus had to unlearn everything he thought he knew about moving through space. In zero gravity, human instincts often worked against survival, but Thrak taught him to think differently, to move like water instead of fighting against weightlessness. "Observe," the stalker said as they practiced in the ship's cargo bay. Thrak moved through the air like liquid shadow, touching surfaces just enough to change direction without making a sound. "Your species evolved to move on solid ground, but space has no ground. You must become like the void itself, present but unnoticed." Marcus struggled at first. His movements were clumsy, too forceful. He made noise when he should have been silent. But gradually, something clicked. He began to understand that space movement was more like swimming than walking. Flow instead of force. Patience instead of power. "Better," Thrak observed after Marcus managed to cross the bay without sound. "You learn quickly for a ground-born creature." They spent weeks in empty space, far from any inhabited system. Marcus learned to read star charts that showed the secret paths between worlds, routes that pirates used to avoid patrols, hiding places where criminals thought they were safe. "The galaxy is not what your people think it is," Thrak explained as they studied a holographic map. "Civilization exists only in small bubbles of light. Between them lies the true universe. Vast, dark, and lawless." Marcus traced a route with his finger. "How many people live out here?" "Millions. Pirates, smugglers, slavers, refugees, outcasts. Some are evil, some are victims. All are forgotten by the civilized worlds." Thrak manipulated the display to show hidden bases and secret ports. "This is where we hunt." Their first target was a slaver named Vex Korin, who operated near the Kepler system. He specialized in kidnapping children from frontier colonies and selling them to brothels and fighting pits in the Outer Rim. Local authorities knew about him but couldn't catch him. His ship was too fast, his hideouts too well hidden. "How do we find him?" Marcus asked, as they approached the region where Korin was known to operate. "We think like prey," Thrak replied. "Where would a slaver hunt? What would make him feel safe?" Marcus studied the star charts, thinking about Korin's methods. The man preferred small colonies with minimal defenses, places where children played outside without fear. He needs to observe his targets before striking. Somewhere he can watch without being noticed. Good. What else? Marcus thought harder. He needs to escape quickly after an attack. So his observation point would be close to a jump route, but not too close. That would be obvious. Thrak's eyes brightened with approval. Continue. And he's human, so he thinks like humans. He would want somewhere comfortable to wait. Maybe an asteroid with an atmosphere, or a hidden base with life support. Together, they narrowed down the possibilities to 3 systems. The first was empty, the second showed signs of recent activity but no current presence. The third looked promising. Energy readings that suggested hidden machinery and the chemical traces of life support systems. They found Korin's base inside a hollowed-out asteroid, disguised to look like a natural formation. His ship was docked at a concealed port, and his crew of 6 other humans was preparing for their next raid. 12 children on Gamma Centauri colony. Marcus heard Corin telling his men, as they watched from hiding, ages 5 to 15. Perfect for the buyers on Nexus Prime, Marcus felt anger burn in his stomach. These weren't enemies in a war or criminals who had chosen their path as adults. They were children who would be stolen from their families and sold like property. "How do we stop them?" he whispered to Kethrak. "We hunt," the stalker replied simply. The attack came at night, ship time, when most of the slavers were sleeping. Marcus had learned to move in darkness, to strike without warning, to disable rather than kill when possible. But Kethrak had been clear about one thing. Some predators could not be reformed, only removed. Marcus took out the guards while Kethrak dealt with Corin himself. The slaver leader died quickly, never knowing what had killed him. His crew was captured and left bound for the authorities, along with evidence of their crimes and the location of their victims' buyers. "Why didn't we kill them all?" Marcus asked as they prepared to leave. "Because some were forced into this life. Some can be redeemed." Kethrak studied the captured slavers through the security feeds. The hunters learned to judge not just actions, but intentions. These men followed Corin out of fear or desperation. Without him, they may choose a different path. It was Marcus's first lesson in the complexity of justice. Not all criminals were equally guilty. Some deserved death, others deserved a chance at redemption. Learning to tell the difference was part of becoming a true hunter. Their next target was a pirate captain named Thex Valdo, a Valorian who attacked merchant vessels carrying medical supplies to frontier worlds. He had killed hundreds, stolen millions of credits worth of medicine, and left entire colonies to die of preventable diseases. This time, Marcus took the lead in planning the hunt. He studied Valdo's attack patterns, identified his likely targets, and predicted where the pirate would strike next. When Valdo's ship attacked a medical transport in the Rigel system, Marcus and Kethrak were waiting. The battle was brief but intense. Valdo was a skilled pilot with advanced weapons, but he had never faced an enemy who could think 3 moves ahead. Marcus used his understanding of ship systems to disable Valdo's vessel without destroying it, trapping the pirate for the authorities to find. "You learn well, brother," Kethrak observed as they watched Confederation patrol ships arrive to arrest Valdo and his crew. "Your planning was excellent, your execution was precise, but most importantly, you remembered our code." Marcus nodded. They could have killed all the pirates, but most were just following orders. Only Valdo himself deserved to die, and the authorities could handle that justice. Word began to spread through the criminal underground about a new hunter. Stories told of a human who appeared from nowhere, who thought like prey but struck like a predator. Some called him the Ghost Walker, others whispered about the human shadow. Pirates and slavers began to fear attacks from an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. But the stories also reached civilized space. Confederation intelligence services started investigating reports of impossible rescues and mysterious disappearances. Some officials dismissed the tales as mythology. Others began to wonder if there might be truth behind the legends. Marcus found that each hunt taught him something new about himself. He was good at this work, better than he had ever been at anything else. The skills that made him an outcast among civilized beings made him deadly among criminals. "I understand now," he told Kethrak after their 5th successful hunt. "This is what I was meant to do. Not fixing air filters or cleaning pipes. This." "You were always a hunter," Kethrak replied. "You simply needed to find the right prey." They had been working together for 8 months when the emergency message reached them. Kepler Station was under attack by the Crimson Nebula Syndicate, the largest criminal organization in the sector. The syndicate blamed recent losses on a mysterious ghost hunter and had decided to make an example of any station that might have harbored their enemy. Marcus stared at the message in disbelief. "They're going to destroy the station because of us? Because of what we represent," Kethrak corrected. "We have disrupted their operations, killed their leaders, freed their slaves. They must respond with overwhelming force or appear weak to their rivals. 50,000 innocents live on that station." "Yes," And the Confederation fleet is 3 days away. Too far to help. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. We have to go back. Yes. Thrak agreed. We do. But understand, brother. If we return to save them, your death will become real. You can never again be Marcus Chen, maintenance worker. You will be something else, entirely. Marcus thought about Commander Zalak, who had called him a lucky savage, about Vortak and the engineers who had mocked his primitive methods, about all the beings on Kepler Station who had made him feel worthless and alone. Then he thought about the children who played in the station's parks, the families who had done nothing wrong except exist in the wrong place at the wrong time, the innocents who would die because criminals wanted revenge against a hunter they couldn't catch. Set course for Kepler Station, Marcus said firmly. It's time to go home. Thrak's eyes glowed with something that might have been pride. Welcome to your true life, brother. Let us show the galaxy what hunters can do. Kepler Station burned in the darkness. The Crimson Nebula Syndicate had brought 12 warships, more firepower than some planetary defense forces. They surrounded the station like wolves circling wounded prey, their weapons locked on civilian targets. The station's own defenses were pathetic by comparison. A few security patrol boats, and some defensive turrets designed to stop pirates, not a full military assault. Commander Zelak's voice echoed through the station's communication system, trying to maintain calm while negotiating for time they didn't have. This is an unlawful attack on a civilian facility. The Confederation is not here, came the cold reply from the Syndicate flagship. We are. You have harbored the Ghost Hunter, who has cost us millions of credits and dozens of operations. Your station will serve as an example to others who might consider helping our enemies. In the lower maintenance sections of Kepler Station, two figures moved through passages that security had forgotten existed. Marcus Chen was no longer the awkward maintenance worker who had left 8 months ago. His movements were fluid and silent, his senses alert to every detail of his environment. The shy young human had been replaced by something far more dangerous. The Syndicate ships are holding position outside the defense grid, Thrak observed, studying a portable scanner. They want to cause fear before they strike. Classic predator behavior. Marcus checked his equipment. Weapons, cutting tools, emergency patches, and a dozen other items that might be useful. How many crew members on their flagship? 200, according to intelligence reports. But most will be aboard other vessels. The flagship probably holds 50, including their leader, Vex Tarkan. The same Tarkan who ordered the massacre on Proxima Colony? The same. He has been hunting us for months, blaming us for his losses. This attack is personal for him. Marcus felt the familiar calm that came before action. Good. Personal enemies make mistakes. They reached the central hub of the station through maintenance shafts that Marcus had once used to hide from the world. Now he used them to save it. The hub was chaos. Security officers running between posts, civilians huddled in emergency shelters, and politicians arguing over surrender terms. There, someone shouted. Intruders in Section 12. Marcus stepped into the main corridor with Thrak beside him. The security teams raised their weapons, then hesitated as they recognized the human face beneath the hunter's gear. Marcus Chen, whispered Lieutenant Torres, a security officer who had often made jokes about primitive humans. But you're dead. The accident was necessary, Marcus replied calmly. Where is Commander Zelak? Command Center. But Marcus was already moving, flowing through the corridors with Thrak like shadows made solid. Behind them, the security teams struggled to keep up, their heavy boots and clanking equipment marking them as amateurs compared to the silent hunters. The command center doors burst open as Marcus and Thrak entered. Inside, Commander Zelak stood at the central display, his orange eyes dim with defeat. Around him, the station's senior staff argued uselessly about options they didn't have. Impossible, Zelak breathed, staring at Marcus. You died in a hull breach. I got better, Marcus said simply. What's the tactical situation? Chief Engineer Vortak. The Valorian who had spent months mocking Marcus's methods found his voice. "Who authorized you to enter this facility? And what is that creature?" Kess's Thrax eyes brightened with amusement. "I am the reason your station is about to die, Valorian. Your hunters have made me very unpopular with the criminal element." "Hunters?" Drellick the Cerebran analyst floated forward, his large brain pulsing with confusion. "You mean the ghost hunter stories are true?" "Very true," Marcus confirmed, moving to the tactical display. "And right now, that's the only thing standing between this station and total destruction." The display showed the Syndicate ships in perfect attack formation. 12 vessels against a station that couldn't fight back. It should have been an easy victory for the criminals. "They're using standard pirate tactics," Marcus observed, studying their positions. "Overwhelming force, psychological pressure, minimal risk to themselves. But they're also following patterns." Zelak stepped closer, his earlier dismissive attitude replaced by desperate hope. "Can you stop them?" "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "But not the way you think." He turned to address the entire command staff. "The Syndicate expects you to either surrender or be destroyed. They've planned for defensive fire, evacuation attempts, or calls for help. But they haven't planned for a counterattack." "Counterattack?" Vortak's forearms gestured in dismay. "We have 3 patrol boats against 12 warships. We have something better," Marcus replied. "We have a station they want to capture intact, and they have no idea what we're really capable of." Kesthrak moved to the engineering station. "Your power systems, maintenance human. Can you overload them safely?" Marcus smiled, and several beings stepped back from the expression on his face. "I can overload anything safely. The question is what we want to accomplish." "Explain," Zelak demanded. Marcus called up the station's engineering schematics. Kepler Station isn't just a trading post. It's a massive industrial facility with fusion reactors, manufacturing complexes, and enough stored energy to power a small fleet. Right now, you're thinking like victims. But this station is actually the most powerful weapon in the system. He began highlighting systems on the display. "If we reroute power from the life support backup systems, overcharge the manufacturing lasers, and redirect the waste heat disposal network, we can turn the entire outer ring into a directed energy weapon." The command staff stared at the display in shock. Drellick's brain pulsed rapidly as he ran calculations. "The power requirements. It's theoretically possible. But the risk of catastrophic failure is acceptable," Marcus finished. "Because catastrophic failure is exactly what happens if we do nothing." Zelak looked from Marcus to the display and back. "How long would this take?" 20 minutes for the basic modifications. But I'll need engineering teams in 6 different sections, all working simultaneously." Marcus looked directly at Vortak. "Teams that can follow instructions without questioning the primitive human giving them." Vortak's expression cycled through anger, pride, and finally pragmatic acceptance. "What do you need us to do?" For the next 20 minutes, Marcus became what he had always been meant to be. Not a subordinate following orders, but a leader solving problems that others couldn't understand. His voice echoed through the station's engineering channels as he coordinated modifications that would have been impossible for anyone who didn't know every pipe, wire, and circuit in the facility. "Reroute the primary plasma flow through Junction 7 Alpha," he told one team. "Bypass the safety interlocks on Manufacturing Laser Array 3, he instructed another. "And somebody needs to manually align the heat disposal vents to focus on grid coordinates I'm sending now." Kesthrak monitored the Syndicate ships, reporting their movements to Marcus. "They're growing impatient. Tarkan is demanding a response within 5 minutes, or he begins bombardment." "Tell him he can have his response," Marcus replied, making the final adjustments to the station's power grid. "He's about to get more than he bargained for." The transformation was invisible to outside observers. Kepler Station looked the same, a peaceful trading post with minimal defenses. But Marcus had turned it into something unprecedented. A space station that could fight like a warship. "Ready," Marcus announced to the command center. Zelak hesitated. "Are you certain this will work?" I'm certain it's our only chance. Marcus moved to the weapons control station. But Commander, this isn't your call anymore. This is what hunters do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Tarkan's voice came over the communication system one final time. Kepler Station, you have had sufficient time to consider surrender. Since you choose defiance, you choose death. All ships, open fire. Now, Marcus said quietly. The station's outer ring blazed with energy as manufacturing lasers designed to cut through asteroids focused their power on the Syndicate ships. Plasma meant for industrial heating became weapons of war. Heat disposal systems that normally vented waste energy into space created focused beams of destruction. The Syndicate flagship, positioned directly in front of the station's main docking bay, took the full force of the converted industrial systems. Its shields collapsed in seconds. Its hull began to melt. Emergency alarms screamed as Tarkan realized his prey had become a predator. Impossible! Tarkan's voice cracked with panic. Stations don't have weapons like these. This one does now, Marcus replied over the open channel. 3 Syndicate ships were destroyed outright. 4 more were crippled, their crews abandoning ship. The remaining vessels tried to retreat, but Marcus had planned for that too. The station's tractor beam emitters, normally used for guiding cargo ships, had been modified to prevent escape. You cannot hold us forever, Tarkan screamed from his burning flagship. I don't need to, Marcus answered calmly. The Confederation fleet will arrive in 18 hours. But you won't live that long. Kessis Thrak had been silent during the battle. But now he spoke with something like pride in his voice. You fight well, brother. Your ancestors would be proud. Marcus looked around the command center at the beings who had once dismissed him as a primitive savage. They stared back with expressions ranging from awe to fear to something that might have been respect. The Syndicate ships are requesting permission to surrender, Lieutenant Torres reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Granted, Marcus said. But Tarkan dies. He's murdered too many innocents to deserve mercy. Zelak stepped forward. You can't just execute a prisoner. Marcus turned to face the Valorian commander, and for a moment his eyes held the same dangerous glow as Kes Thrak's. He's not a prisoner. He's prey. And I'm a hunter. Before anyone could stop him, Marcus was gone, flowing out of the command center with inhuman grace. Kes Thrak followed, and together they moved through the station toward the docking bay, where Tarkan's damaged flagship had been forced to dock. The confrontation was brief. Tarkan was a killer and a coward. Dangerous to helpless victims, but no match for a trained hunter. Marcus gave him a fair fight, weapon to weapon, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Proxima Colony massacre was finally avenged. When Marcus returned to the command center, he found the entire staff watching him with new eyes. Vortax stepped forward first. His forearms spread in the Valorian gesture of respect. I owe you an apology, the engineer said simply. I called your methods primitive. I was wrong. They are elegant. Drellick floated closer, his large brain pulsing with what might have been embarrassment. Your approach to problem-solving. It is not barbaric. It is sophisticated in ways our instruments cannot measure. Commander Zelak was the last to speak. His orange eyes were brighter now, holding something that hadn't been there before. The Confederation will want to know how this was accomplished, how we turned a trading station into a weapon capable of defeating a Syndicate fleet. Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. You can tell them whatever you want, Commander, but I won't be here to explain it. Where will you go? Marcus looked at Kessis Thrak, who nodded slightly. Back to the hunt. There are other predators out there. Other innocents who need protection. The galaxy is a big place, but you saved us. Torres protested. You're a hero. You could have anything you want. Rank, position, recognition. I have everything I want, Marcus replied. I have a brother, a purpose, and the knowledge that I'm exactly who I was meant to be. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Commander? The next time someone offers you a simple solution to a complex problem, you might want to listen. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. Kesthrak followed Marcus out of the command center, and together they disappeared into the maintenance passages that had once been Marcus's refuge from the world. Hours later, a small, unregistered ship departed from Kepler Station's lower docking bay. It vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying 2 hunters back to their natural habitat. Behind them, the station buzzed with activity as repair crews worked to fix the damage, and investigators tried to understand how the impossible had become reality. In the depths of space, Marcus Chen looked at the stars and felt truly at home for the first time in his life. He was no longer the shamed human trying to fit into someone else's idea of civilization. He was a hunter, a protector, a bridge between the old ways and the new galaxy. "Where do we go now, brother?" he asked Kesthrak. The stalker's eyes glowed with anticipation. "Wherever the hunt takes us. There are always more predators to stop, more innocents to protect." Marcus smiled and settled back in his seat. "Good. I'm just getting started." Behind them, Kepler Station grew smaller until it was just another point of light in the darkness. But the story of the human who had saved 50,000 lives with primitive methods and elegant solutions would spread throughout the galaxy. And in the dark spaces between stars, criminals would learn to fear the name of Marcus Chen, the ghost hunter who had proven that humanity belonged among the hunters of the void.